Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Tonight is Monday, February 21st, and it is 6:31 p.m. So let's get started. Commissioners present: Commissioner Eisenberg, Commissioner Hendricks, myself, Commissioner Fuertes, and Commissioner Boswell. The third item on our agenda here is the introduction of agenda and format of hearing, and that goes to our wonderful planner, Mr. Martin Griggs. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. So for tonight's meeting, we'll have a call to order followed by a staff report. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to present. Afterwards, the public has opportunity to make comments in either support or opposition. At that time, please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. Afterwards, the commission and staff will have a discussion. Commission will then vote to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the item. City Council will have their hearing for the zone changes and conditional use permit items at the March 7th meeting. On the agenda tonight, we have a zone change for property at the southwest quadrant of McLean and Bailey, and then a conditional use permit for a warehouse self-storage use at 1323 Main Street. The thoroughfare plan amendment and future land use plan amendments are postponed due to a quorum, and that is because we have a commissioner that would need to recuse themselves and would not be able to even bring those two items for discussion at this meeting. With that said, I'll pass it back to you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Well, then let's get to the item number 4, which is the consent agenda. And the only item under the consent agenda is the approval of the minutes of the meeting, our previous meeting on February 7th, 2022. Do I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Hendrick, second.
All right. No discussion on a consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 4-0 unanimously. This time with the mic on. That brings us to items removed from the consent agenda. There were none. So we'll go to new business, item 6, Roman numeral 6. Under that Roman numeral 6, the first consideration and possible action, this is a zone change application, zone 21-00022. And this is a request by Navam Sivaruban, the One P.E Group LLC applicant, on behalf of Mamun Hussein, Amana Group owner, for approval of a zone change from the Suburban Residential District 15, which is SR 15 district, to light industrial M1 district on approximately 2 acres of land to wit. The location thereof, or general location, is the southwest quadrant of McLean Road and Bailey Road. Do I hear a motion, please, for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Samin Bazargan with our planning group. Take it away.
Thank you, Martin, and members of Zoning and Planning Commission. So the first case is a zone change request from Suburban Residential SR15 district to light industrial M1 on approximately 2 acres of land located at the southwest quadrant of McLean Road and Bailey Road. This case was discussed in our previous planning and zoning meeting on February 7th, and it was tabled by Commission. The applicant intends to rezone the property in order to locate a self-storage facility with approximately 198 units. So far, we have received 2 calls and 16 letters in objection to the proposed zone change. As it shows in the next slide, the notification map, 2 of the properties that we received the opposition letters are within that boundaries. One of them, yes, this one is one of the letters, and the other one on the south is in our ATJ. The rest of the letters are from properties in our ATJ or outside this boundary. So the next slide is the zoning and aerial map, and you can see the property is surrounded by similar zone district. However, on the east you see RV park, and on the east and partially on the north you see a vacant lot. To the north, across the street of Bailey, you see a subdivision, and also on that corner there is a school. And this slide is the future land use map, and it shows that the subject property is designated as low density residential. And this is the preliminary and conceptual site plan of the proposed self-storage. This is a view of the subject property from McLean Road. And the next slide are the views from adjacent properties to the east and north and west. So for criteria, the proposed zone change does not match the comprehensive plan. The McLean Road is a major thoroughfare and has to be widened, which will be confirmed during platting process. The property is not platted yet and has no access to water and sewer utility. So next slide shows the conceptual plan of the proposed self-storage. I'm sorry. Next slide is the criteria for approval of a proposed zoning change. So as mentioned, the proposed zoning amendment does not meet criteria of the policies of the adopted comprehensive plan, including the land use classification of the property on the future land use. The proposed or potential uses permitted by the proposed change in zoning district classification and the standards applicable to such uses will not be appropriate in the immediate area of the land to be reclassified. The proposed change is in accordance with an existing or proposed plans for providing public schools, streets, water supply, sanitary sewer, and other public services and utilities to the area. And this area, next slide shows that the Commission tabled this item from the February 17 meeting pending further action by the City Council on amendments to the Unified Development Code, UDC, regarding self-storage uses. On February 14, the City Council approved UDC amendments that allow self-storage uses to be permitted by conditional use permits within general business, general commercial, light and heavy industrial zone district. And this will affect this request by this request for the zone change. And according to the slide shows and what we discussed, staff is unable to recommend approval of the proposed zone change from suburban residential 15 to light industrial district. The Commission may recommend approval of the request as presented, recommend approval of a less intense zoning district designation within the same zoning category if the category is residential, commercial, or industrial. The district shall be considered less intense if it's listed in section 2.4 1.1 of this UDC before the district sought by the applicant. And number 3, recommend denial of the request. And that completes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Is the applicant here tonight? If you would, state your name and address for the record, please, when you start. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
My name is Mamun Hussein with Roughneck Mini Storages. Currently reside at 3617 Fur Hollow Way.
Sir, if you'd be so kind, could you please make sure that microphone is working or redirect it?
How's that?
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Appreciate that.
My name is Mamun Hussein with Roughneck Mini Storages, currently residing at 3617 Fur Hollow Way at 77581. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me this afternoon, and I want to bring up a couple points regarding the zone change. 1 second. What we're here asking today is the committee actually make a recommendation to our city council for a zone change from the current residential status to commercial or M1 to allow mini storages to come into the vicinities. I've got a few points I'd like to bring to the committee's attention to make sure for you to take that in consideration when you're making your recommendation. Currently, the city of Pearland has invested millions of dollars currently on Bailey Road to expand that, to take the traffic away from 518 and make it a major thoroughfare. With that, it was with the intention of bringing in investors such as myself to Bailey Road to bring in new properties and new investments to Bailey Road. We saw, they rang the bell and we showed up. Currently, the property that we purchased cannot be zoned as residential for the simple reason it is not developable for a residential property. As you're aware of it, that particular property is about a foot below the current crown of the street. In order to make that one a residential property, we're looking at somewhere around $800,000 of investment in backfill to make it a residential property. The property is not buildable for residential. Based on those formulas, if you were going to bring in $800,000 of backfill to make it a residential property, you would actually end up with a property somewhere around the ballpark of $7.5 million for resale, which is, it's not doable in that particular area. Secondly, there is no water and sewer, as the lady addressed, at that particular location. In order to get water and sewer, you're literally crossing the street to bring in water and sewer. In order to have a residential property there, you don't have the depth based on the soil reports to go in and put in a well or a septic as it currently sits. Recently, the city council here last week was listening to arguments as far as amending or I guess adding to the budget or development in that area to bring in residential properties, where one of the focuses of that was the actual property that we were located on. I understand there's a lot of concerns about the residences here for the particular development of that property. We actually reached out to all the residences in that area. We both tried to contact them by phone, and we did send letters to them. Whatever concerns our residences have, us being residences here at Pearland as well, that might impact them negatively in that area, we are prepared to address before permitting of that property. Be it anything from a masonry wall between our properties to building our properties up on stilts so we don't affect any of the floodways that are currently existing in that area. That being said, as it sits right now, I want to emphasize that particular property is unusable as a residence. It cannot be developed as a residence. It is absolutely not cost effective for that property to ever be developed as a residence outside of making a multifamily project in that particular area. And there's not enough land there for that multifamily. Regarding one of the concerns that they had with the foot traffic, this is a mini storage. There is no foot traffic with mini storages. The traffic is minimal for particular mini storages. The security is there to better our neighborhood and to better our community, but there is no foot traffic that you would have to be concerned about with as far as traffic flowing in and out of the mini storages. Above all else, obviously converting that into commercial property, which is the only reason, the only logical thing it could possibly be is converted into a commercial property. The property values for our existing residences out there, the increase in property values to everyone about it, so everyone's going to benefit from us bringing in businesses. Bailey Road currently has a few developments going on out there that are commercial. I'm not exactly sure where the standoff is, why we stopped at McLean when we have current mini storages to the right of us and in front of us. All I have.
Thank you for those comments. Next on our agenda is the persons wishing to speak for or against this item. If you would be so kind to, if there is anyone, to step up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. And if you would, at some point, please fill out this, I've heard lavender and other colors that I... You remembered. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of the family. My name is Leticia Cantu, and I live at 1115 Chelsea Lane in East Pier. I guess I just wanted to, it's not, if you buy a property for residential, I'm sorry that maybe that person didn't do all their investigation that it was what it was, and it is a flood zone. It is a floodway. There is a lot of problems. It's 24 hours a day. Mini storage, meaning people can go 24 hours a day. They can load, unload. They can do whatever they want out there with nobody on the property to even investigate what's going on with the lighting and everything else. Building a wall is totally not doing any good to the property that we hold dearly to our hearts, where we hold our family gatherings at. If you put up a block, a big wall, you just block everything that we enjoy is the scenery in that area. We don't want that in next door to us. And I'm sorry that if he feels that it's not worth doing anything residential, that's not our problem. We don't need any more industry there. It's residential. Let us enjoy the fireworks at night with all these lightings. Let us enjoy our lives. There's no reason for mini storages. We don't need them. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And please, if you would, when you have the time, fill out that form. Is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against this item? And by the way, I did get some public comments, the ones that were sent in. I believe we received an email earlier, there were 10, but now I understand it's at 14. 16 altogether, 2 were phone calls, correct? And they were all in opposition? Okay. Just wanted to state that for the record.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
To clarify, Mr. Fuertes, Chair Fuertes, the phone calls are indicative. They're not controlling.
Yes.
The written comments are going to be what triggers if there are people within a certain parameter or distance of that site. The written opposition would be something that would trigger the supermajority, and those are going to be what's controlling. It's my understanding that it's not really something that you need to worry about, though. That's for City Council to know how many votes it takes.
Sure.
It should not affect your vote, but of course, it gives you insight as to what the neighbors are thinking.
Absolutely. Thank you. So back to the question then. Is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Last call. Anyone wishing to speak for or against? All right. Right under the wire.
My name is Billy Griffin, resident here all my life. He's talking about $800,000 to build this up for residential. Where's he going to put the water? Where's he going to drain the water? Because I think this lady right here lives next door to it, and it's already flooding. And whenever he builds more and builds this up, he's got to build up to get this stuff out of the flood zone. I'd like to know where you gonna put the water.
If you would, dialogue with us, and then we'll ask that appropriate question at the time.
What's that now?
If you would dialogue with us,
Okay.
and then we'll during our time of questioning,
Like
we'll
I
ask
say,
that
and he's
question.
saying $800,000 to raise this land. Show me. You raise it 4 foot. These people right here built right there. They raised where their house was for 4 foot for their home, and they didn't flood nobody else. And he's talking about 800,000. I don't know where he's going to put. He must be raising this thing so high. When he does that, he's really going to flood us. My property's right across the street. Lived there all my life, 50, 60 years. And it's already coming across McLean, and it's never done that. And when you add on right there, get ready, because we're going to flood. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for those comments.
Mr. Griffith, if you'd over here, sir. If you'd be so kind, there's a lavender form, periwinkle form behind you. We need to get I think it's right outside the door. We need to get your name and contact information on that. And because you are within the abutter zone, within 200 feet of his property, yes, sir. If you'd write at the bottom in the comments, if you're in favor or opposed to it, it would help. Thank you, sir.
While he's doing that, is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against this item? And this is the last call. You're the applicant and you've had your time. Is that?
Yes, sir. If after this item, there's a discussion item, if the P&Z or any members of the P&Z want to ask or have a dialogue with the applicant at that time, they're welcome to do so.
Thank you. Okay, so last time, anyone else wishing to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next, and that is the staff commission and applicant discussion. And before I hand it off to the commissioners, if I could ask a question of our engineering, just to understand, this is in the floodway, correct?
Correct. As of now, the property located in floodway.
And something I learned, though, the city has applied what we call a LOMAR, a letter of map revision, to a federal agency to pull it out of, correct?
Correct. This happened, I believe, about 2 or 3 years ago due to the change to the FEMA's firm. At that point, FEMA requested city to stop at that stage. We are going to resume that process. I do not have a time frame for that, but at some point, city and BDD4, I believe, together, we need to resume that process. However, the applicant legally can do their own LOMAR. It's normally very costly, but it's an option.
Commissioners?
I have several comments. I do take note of the fact that so many comments were received in a negative view of this zone change. So I do respect that. And this comment is starting off for staff. My question is, you don't recommend the zone change. And then we heard from the applicant that it would be extremely difficult to turn this into residential property. What, if anything, realistically could be done with this property? Would residential be an option? And are the numbers that were quoted, such as the 800,000 and not having access to water and sewage, is that accurate for really not being able to turn that property into residential?
If before any staff members respond to that, if as a staff member, I could say, in regards to the water, city water is not available, but the city does not have the authority by the state of Texas to sell water at that location. The CCN, which is an acronym for something I always forget, is issued to Frontier Water Service, and they are able to provide water to that area. There is a force main directly in front of that for sewer services. There's a force main directly in front of that, and the lot is large enough to have a septic tank. So sewer services there is a possibility to have sewage serve that site. So those aren't things that you need to worry about. Okay. The flood zone actually isn't something that you need to worry about for these zone change requests. This is, are you willing to have the specified uses of anything that's allowed in an M1, or as the applicant's saying tonight, anything in a GC on that site? That's really what the focus of the discussion is, and it has to be based on the criteria that staff had, and I think they gave you what their thoughts were about that, with not the code conformance table, but the one after that. However, that's something that's done at time of permit review. So I don't want anybody on the P&Z to get hung up on the flooding or the not flooding. That's something that happens if and when they come in and submit their permit.
Well, that's not what I'm caught up on, because I understand that if we do a zone change, it's not the mini storage that concerns me. I know that there are other potential uses, so you're changing the zoning for the land. He could say mini storage, but come in and do something else once that's changed. My question is that, is residential even possible for him? Because that would affect my decision. Would he be able to do anything with his land if it stays zone residential and we do reject the proposal for the M1 or any type of zone change?
So, and I would only say the property is currently zoned residential, and somebody can come in and apply for a residential permit today.
Right. And I'm asking, realistically, would he be able to do residential with the property, aside from sewage and water issues that you said could easily be corrected?
And I would just suggest that, yes, ma'am, there may be engineering challenges.
But it is doable.
It's possible. And for that one, I would turn more towards the engineer, because I'm not one, but...
That's all I'm asking.
Sure. I prefer not going to the financial part of it, because I'm not really familiar with the numbers. But on paper, yes, you can put one or two houses there, because I'm not 100% clear they can use that sanitary sewer. To my understanding, that sewer line is a private line, and city cannot allow any connection to that. We can have additional discussion. If my thoughts are correct and they have to be on the septic system and water well, then they need to subdivide the land no less than 1 acre, which if the lot is 2 acre, you can create only 2 property. That is on the subdividing part. As the gentleman, the applicant mentioned, I believe, please don't take the numbers from me, the base flood elevation at this location is 48. The land average is 47. The finished floor elevation of the house for a pier and beam structure needs to be 18-inch above that BFE, means 49.5. On paper, you can put 2 houses on this lot. I don't know if, financially is feasible for someone to do this kind of investment. If they bring any fill, they need to mitigate that. And the same story about the floodway also will be applicable to a residential structure as well.
Thank you.
I have a question on that too. Did we discuss like the requirements that before they do anything, it would have to be brought up out of the floodway first?
Correct. That's what we mentioned. They need to get a LOMAR, letter of map revision, to remove the property from floodway. Yeah. And normally when you do that in a case like this, the property will still stay in the floodplain, which you need to mitigate and detention, all those requirements.
Right. So I guess my comments are, I don't obviously have the topo, but it shows to be 4 foot under base flood elevation, just based on doing some research on the property. And my concern is changing the zoning for this, that might mislead the next person who, let's say they don't build the mini storage or whatever they want to build there, let's say that that plan doesn't work out for whatever reason, is misleading the next person that this is an industrial piece of property because we changed it to that, or M1 or general commercial. I think it would just be, I would feel better about it if it was already out of the floodway. If it was already out of the floodway and there was a more definite plan of how they plan to mitigate for this, because that's quite a bit of fill. And I don't want to mislead the next buyer that developing industrial property in the floodway is, oh, the city changed it to that, so it must be okay to do that. That it's going to work out, and I just think that's going to be misleading. And for me tonight would be a no. But if it was brought up out of the floodway, I don't have an issue with the mini storage. But I'd prefer it more on the corner, but I just don't have an issue with that. I just have more of a concern of making that zone change with the way this property is now. And that's it.
I'm going to try to focus on the zoning itself. M1 zoning in a neighborhood I don't want to say the middle of the neighborhood, but one off the corner is, to me, with no other M1 around there, is, would be considered, in my opinion, somewhat of a spot zoning. And even if you said commercial, if that corner, and I realize this piece, if we could get on the, just the map there of, if the corner were commercial, I would consider, or general business, I would consider zoning the same. But as it sits right now, everything there is SR 15, and you're just asking us to vote for something to an industrial. And I realize that, the process here is we have to do this first, and if it were granted, we would then go to a CUP. But if the CUP were denied, and that stands for a conditional use permit, so that would be the second step. If that were denied, we now have a parcel that's either industrial or general business or general commercial. And I don't think that's fair to the other residents. I do realize across the street you have some uses that are not residential. Those parcels, when the city annexed them in, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when the city annexed those parcels in, their use was grandfathered in. So that's why you can have storage across the street. It was there when it got annexed. And now this one, it needs to follow, because of timing, essentially, it needs to follow the criteria to turn it into a parcel that would allow for storage and or some other use. Without that corner being commercial, I've thought about this over the last couple of weeks. I just can't get there, and I don't know that I would vote for the corner at this point. Commercial, I don't know if I could get there. I didn't want to focus on the flooding or that stuff. To me, that's an engineering issue. That's a permitting issue. That's an issue that's not necessarily zoning. So forgive me for not addressing some of those comments. I wrote a whole bunch of notes, and I'm just trying to check and make sure I've touched on these. One last little item of detail. The city council, when they approved or they said it's okay for storage buildings in GC, GB, and they'll stand for something, I'm sorry, I'm using acronyms, M1 and M2, did they not also specify that these would have to be air conditioned?
Correct. So upon approval of a conditional use permit, a mini warehouse self-storage use would still need to abide by the regulations specific to use. One of those regulations being that it is climate controlled.
climate controlled is a much better thing than saying air conditioned, right? Thank you. And that then would tell me that the site plan that we saw doesn't make sense, and we shouldn't be voting on the site plan to begin with. So that you all know that. I'm saying some of these things out loud so we all are on the same page. I think that's it for me. Daryl, you're saying you don't want to make a comment because you've already. Okay. All right. So is there anything else?
I'll say one final comment, and this is to the applicant. I do understand your plight, and that's why I was trying to get better understanding from staff concerning would it be doable for you to do anything with your property? Because as we care about the citizens who are opposed to this, I also realize that for purchased property, you should be able to do something with it as well. And it just seems that it would be expensive for you to do it, but that it would be doable. And that would be my reasoning for not wanting to rezone this property, because you just take additional money, but it does seem like you would be able to get there and make some use out of the property. So I wanted to explain why I went into such detail in my questioning, because I did want to make sure that it might not be feasible in your definition, but that you would be able to do something with the property if it's not zone changed. This is not a discussion, it's just a comment. Thank you.
If there's nothing further, we have a motion and a second on the we have a motion and a second, and the motion is for approval, so the vote is then based on that. So
it's approval of the M1 zoning district as requested.
that is correct. On the M1 zoning, that is correct. That was requested, and we do have the three options up there. But I'm not hearing a motion to change it to any of the other uses mentioned. And so since there's not a motion for that, let's vote on this one, up or down. And all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. The measure is denied 4-0, 0-4. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you applicants for coming tonight. Thank you, sir. There's no reason to stand there if you don't want to. But it is a nice, comfortable place, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, the yours is over with. You have about 10 seconds, please.
Came back and told us it would not work for zoning, for
Sir,
residential. I'm sorry.
Your comments aren't being carried because you're not at the podium.
I apologize. A few months back, we did apply prior to this project going underway to do it as a residential property. We actually intended on bringing in 4 duplexes on that particular property, but based off of all the information we gathered from the city, and we sat down and had our meeting with the city over this particular project twice, it was not doable. It was not buildable for residential properties.
There's nothing that I can do from a planning and zoning
I completely understand that,
commission.
but all due respect, sir, you guys are making comments on things that are unrealistic, because
Well,
the property, as
okay.
you guys stated previously, is about 46 inches below the curve.
My comment to you would be to talk to the council members at this point. This is going to go to council. We're not the final word on it.
I understand.
It's going to go to council. So I think your opportunity for the ears that need to hear what you're saying are there at the council meeting. And that'll be, can you tell me when anybody tell me when that'll be?
March 7th. Correct?
Is council meeting March 7th?
Yeah, March 7th.
So we're not meeting here? We'll be meeting.
That meeting will be like we typically have whenever we have city council and planning and zoning on the same night. Planning and zoning will meet upstairs in the economic development room
room, and then the council will be here March 7th. So public's invited, applicants invited as well. It's just not something we should open back up in here. And I believe me, having done some things, I understand.
Well, my only concern is there's a lot of information flying around, and a lot of people are commenting on things that are unfactual. They're not facts. They're not facts. I'm the one that actually owns the property. I'm the one that walked the property. So we're making decisions based off of things that are not factual.
Again,
We did attempt to try to make this a residential property previously. We were told we couldn't. After we invested $1.2 million into that particular property, now we're being told that we can't use it as commercial. So I'm not exactly sure which way we're supposed to be going with this. The city of Pearland decided to spend millions of dollars building up Bailey for commercial use.
Again, and I understand your frustration.
No,
but
sir,
you're-
you don't. No, sir, you don't. All due respect,
Okay.
but no, you don't, because we're giving information
Well,
out here that's
I allowed you 10,
unrealistic.
you told me 10 seconds you would speak in 10 seconds, and
I
it's gone
apologize.
way over
Thank you
that.
for your time, sir.
Thank you. Next item on tonight's agenda is number 2 under Roman numeral 7, which is new business. And that is a commission input and discussion for conditional use permit application 22-00002. And this is a request by Carolyn O'Brien, Pacheco Koch, I hope I said that correctly, applicant on behalf of Kwok Hwan, the owner, for approval of a conditional use permit, CUP, for a mini warehouse self-storage within the general commercial GC district to accommodate a proposed self-storage consisting of unconditioned and conditioned self-storage. I'm assuming that means climate control. And office business incubator spaces on a 10.61 acre land of land, and that general location is 1323 Main Street in Pearland, Texas. Do I hear a motion for approval, please?
This will not have a motion for approval because it is a conditional use permit.
This is for discussion only.
Correct.
Thank you. Not that I'm a little frazzled after that. So staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Mohammed Brema. He is one of our senior planners, and he will be presenting this case for you tonight. Mohammed, take it away.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Chairman of the Planning Zone Commission. Good evening. This conditional use permit request is for approval of mini warehouse self-storage use within the General Commercial District, GC, to accommodate a proposed self-storage facility on a 10-acre tract located north of 1323 Main Street. Staff did not receive any public comments regarding this request. The next slide is the zoning map, shows the property zone general commercial. And although this property was platted since 1983, it has never developed with a primary use. So it's currently undeveloped. It is surrounded by auto repair shop to the north and a heating and cooling contractor to the south. And across Main Street is the South Park Cemetery. There's also a church on the east side of the creek. The next slide is the future land use plan, which designates the property as industrial. And the next slide is the future, the site plan for the self-storage facility. And it reflects development of a self-storage facility consisting of a climate control portion and unconditioned self-storage units, as well as an office, business incubator offices. This will be located in the front portion of the facility facing Main Street. The unconditioned portion is about 12 buildings and totaling about 62,000 square feet. And then the larger building in the back, that is the climate control, it's about 41,000 square feet. And the facility will be self-controlled, or I guess controlled by access codes outside business hours. And the next slide are some renderings provided by the applicant for the self-storage facility. On the left side, on the top, you'll see the buildings from Main Street. These are the office incubator spaces facing Main Street. And down below, same thing. And then on the right side of the screen, this is kind of a larger development, looking at it from the eastern end of the property. And then at the bottom right is the unconditioned units. And next slide is another one. This is kind of the overall view of how that property will look like, with some trees and vegetation located around the facility. Next slide is some views. This is a view of the property from Main Street, looking towards the east, and you can see the church in the background. Next slide is a couple of views of adjacent properties. On the left side, you will see the alternator shop on the north side of the property, and on the south, on the right side of the screen, you'll see that the warehouses and the, I guess that's the, I think warehouses on the south side of the property. Forgot what that use is. Anyway, the next slide is the conformity table, and as you can see, the CUP is generally consistent with the comp plan, future land use designation, thoroughfare plan. Main Street is a major thoroughfare with sufficient width, and the property is also consistent with the utility map. There's water, sewer available along Main Street. Subject property is currently platted, actually, and it the use will have to conform to the regulations of the GC as well as the corridor overlay district. Main Street is designated as a corridor overlay district. Next slide. These are the approval criteria for CUPs for the mini warehouse, and staff found that they conform to the 7 criteria. Next slide is staff recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the use with the following conditions. The first one is making sure that the office business incubator spaces are placed in the front of the property, with the storage units located in the back, generally in the back. And then the second condition is that additional landscaping needs to be provided to screen the property from the north and south, and with some kind of specified language for how this screening would be provided. These are taken from the UDC. Just want to mention that after the UDC amendment was approved by the City Council on Monday, that the city has adopted 3 conditions for mini warehouse self-storage. So this actually application made it before the UDC was effective. So this was applied for before that. This CUP would meet the first 2 conditions. Basically, the first condition, it says mini warehouses can be applied for, cannot be applied for along corridor overlay district except Main Street. So this Main Street is exemption. And the second one was regarding not being within 300 feet from access to a residential subdivision. There is no residential subdivision along Main Street in that area. The last one, it says that these have to be climate control. And as of right now, as being proposed by the applicant, they do have a portion that is not climate control. Just want to bring that to your attention. And that's the end of staff report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here tonight? I thought you might have just been here for the entertainment. If you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
That's good. I'm Carolyn O'Brien. Address is 20329 State Highway 249, 77070. I'm the civil engineer on the project, so I'm really just here for questions if y'all have any. I can do a spiel if you want, but I'm not sure if you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. I guess I should ask if there's anyone wishing to speak for or against. Going once, going twice, and seeing no one here, actually, we'll move on to the next part, and that is the staff commission applicant discussion. And you can sit down if you'd like. I mean, we'll ask you. I'm sorry. We'll ask you, to speak if we have questions. Thank you very much.
Is there any visuals of the front of this? Okay. Yeah, I think this is a perfect location for this. I just want to make sure that one of the issues I have had living in Pearland is that we want things to look really nice when people are driving down Main Street. And I know that you guys aren't forced to have a really nice facade, but I think that's extremely important. So we don't want it to look bad, because that's a very major corridor road. So I don't really see much added to the facade. That's the only thing. I mean, if you guys aren't forced to at least make it look a little more or less metal building. But outside of that, that's my only comments.
Commissioner Hendricks, just because there's not a vote on this item for the P&Z, and site plans and renderings aren't included as part of the product. You use the word really nice. Aesthetics, nice to you might be different from nice to me, and might be different for nice for the applicant. The only thing that I thought that could potentially be something that City Council pick up is less metal. But I wanted to suggest, if you had ideas of what you think would make it an enhanced architectural improvement or visually appealing that we can incorporate in a standard, I would recommend that you say, I would encourage you to incorporate X element in your design.
So I guess I'd encourage you to incorporate more of a facade look. It could be stone, something along just the front area that doesn't look like this is just a metal building. That's it. And it makes it look nice. I hope that helps.
I had a question concerning, I know that some of the units are going to be climate controlled and others are not. Do you know the percentage of the units that would not be climate controlled?
So, Mr. Bryan, we can't count. Yeah, if you'd go up to the podium, and Commissioner Boswell, I would say that some of the proposed units, not some of, and based on the most recently adopted text amendments to the UDC, that percentage should be 100, would be climate controlled.
When staff made their presentation, they were saying that this is kind of grandfathered in because the application came before the vote. So are we holding them to the climate control, or are we not?
I would say that we are holding them to the climate controlled.
Okay.
Grandfathering is something that can happen for pre-existing zoning.
Okay.
This was not a pre-existing zoning. This is a CUP, and you don't vest in zoning categories or zoning uses unless they're in a specific medium. And I'll use the example as a lot size. The only thing that you can actually be grandfathered in from a zoning perspective would be something like if we said you had to have 1,000 feet of frontage, and the city then changed the frontage requirement for that zoning district, you would get to use the lot size, the lot frontage requirement. As for the conditioned versus not conditioned, that is not one of the things that somebody is able to get grandfathered rights in.
Okay. Thank you. So applicant, to our attorney's point, would all of the units be able to be climate controlled?
So we may need to revise the site plan slightly and have another larger building rather than the drive up, just because it's harder. Those standalone drive up storage are hard to meet energy code. So we may need to look at the layout a little bit more if we can't get grandfathered in and we can't get a variance. Yeah.
Right. I'm just asking because now that's going to be a condition of your permit.
Yeah,
so
we'll,
just making sure.
Yeah, if we have to do it, we have to do it. but it just may slightly, the layout may change slightly.
Okay, thank you.
Now, personally, I don't think I can recommend our first act after they come out and they change where these can be built and stuff. The first thing that we're contemplating is approving stuff that goes against what they just implemented, correct?
So I wouldn't say that this is contemplating approving.
Well, not approving, but recommending
Right.
approval.
I wouldn't even say that. Picture this as you are approving the use. The use still needs to meet the criteria of the Unified Development Code. That's why one of the conditions of approval was not to have 100% conditioned, because that's already written into the Unified Development Code. So there was no need for us to make it a condition. They just need to revise what their illustrations are. But the illustrations are just that.
So the applicant can come back between now and that meeting with different renderings, and even after that meeting with different renderings or site plan things when they submit for permit. They're not locked into the site plan. They're not locked into those renderings. So you have to just imagine this being blank with two or just one climate-controlled storage facilities. Are you willing to approve climate-controlled storage facilities at this location? Staff is making a positive recommendation for that because, they're going to say it meets the code. And that's why on the code conformity table, everything was green.
All righty.
I guess my comments would be that I do not have anything against the use in that location. I think to do climate control, many times you see the storage facilities multi-story. It tends to help their, you said it best, whatever that comment you said was, the energy.
Oh yeah, meet the energy code.
Right. So that may be one of your options. I mean, which darn, you got to be bigger than smaller. I mean, that's not a bad problem to have. But I think that's going to be one of the things you may have to look into. I would recommend you coming back with something that does look, the building, the frontage building, that it does look good. I do have to say that I liked the fact that it wasn't a bunch of orange doors, everywhere. So I appreciate that. That is the kind of the look that we've seen around town, and I hear people gossiping at the water cooler that they don't care for that very much. But the city of Pearland, through the Economic Development Corporation, spent a lot of money to beautify the northern portion of 35 there. It's a gateway into our city, and if you think about it, people come from Hobby Airport, down 35 typically, and that's the first glimpse they see of Pearland when they come in. Unfortunately, there's some existing buildings there that could use some lipstick as well. So I would appreciate this will be one of the best looking buildings, I hope, in that corridor, and I wish you success. For the record, we're supposed to say how we would have voted, or if we like it, or I'm a thumbs up. Do we want to go around the table and?
That's actually not a requirement. That's something that y'all have chosen to do. The only thing that is required, I guess, is for us to capture your comments and pass them on. So I caught Commissioner Hendrick's comments. I tried to, get her to elaborate on that, and I thank you for giving a little bit more detail on that, because that's going to be the type of thing that council wants. I think that's the type of thing that they expect, something that gives them guidance on how to incorporate conditions if they think that they are warranted.
All right, so we'll move forward then. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you for your time.
It was a lot smoother than I'm just throwing that out there. That brings us to item number 3 and item number 4, which My understanding is I need to, I was corrected by one of the council members to use the word postpone rather than table, because table means that we're going to hear it later on in the meeting. So postpone means the next meeting. I'm assuming that's what'll happen. This will go to the March 7th meeting, items 3 and 4. All right, we don't need to open them and postpone them. We just move on. All right, item number 5. This is
I just wanted to clarify one thing for items 3 and 4. I'm not sure if we'll be able to meet the posting requirements for March 7th, that being 2 weeks from now. So it could be bumped from March 7th because the notice has to go to the newspaper at least 15 days prior to the meeting. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to meet that, but we'll see that.
Thank you for
Just
the
wanna
heads
bring
up.
that up.
And for the P&Z, the important thing for tonight is that we will not be discussing those items tonight.
Thank you.
Maybe on the 7th, maybe the one after that.
Got it.
Stay tuned.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then that brings us to item 5 under new business, and that's consideration possible action the select a P&Z commissioner to serve on a drainage bond program committee. And I would assume we need some staff guidance there, what that is.
Fun and enjoying. So City Council has had some discussion over various ways to handle drainage within the city. Last week was a motion to have a committee established to discuss what a drainage bond program would look like. There are a number of citizens that will be appointed to that committee, and part of the recommendation that came out of that was to have a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as y'all have a direct role in planning and developing the city. And the council wanted to make sure that one of y'all had a voice in that committee for discussion purposes.
Thank you.
So the only thing that I would say is that this is a recommendation, or this is somebody offering to sit on it. Ultimately, it's still council who has to appoint the members to the committee. We have no idea of how often they're going to meet. We don't have the details of what that committee ultimately is going to look like, when they're going to meet, and how much time for each meeting it's going to be. But I would say that when we've had other committees appointed, they've done their best to keep it to an hour, between an hour and 30 minutes for each meeting, because they know that people check out and have other things that they need to work on.
My understanding from the packet, though, or clicking on the agenda report, they were supposed to meet twice a month, is what I read. So that's, if I recall correctly. And maybe I recalled incorrectly now. I'm starting to doubt myself.
Are they discussing, is this somebody that should have a good background in finance? Because it's regarding a bond. Just curious.
I think they'll have folks who can handle the bond issues. I think they're looking more for scopes and suggestions.
Like how it would impact businesses or residences?
That'll be absolutely one of the things that they're looking at. Yes, ma'am.
Is this something that, since you don't know exact times and dates, that we could wait till everybody's here and decide then? Or you need somebody like tonight?
Yes, ma'am. If y'all would prefer to kind of wait and make sure that you, well, where I'm from, we nominate the people who don't show up. But, that's that's a different kind of place, I suppose. No, to have somebody who's willing to do it or who wants to weigh in, it makes sense if you wanted to move this item to the next agenda, or at least until you've had a chance to ask the person that you intend to nominate if they'd be willing to accept and serve. That makes perfect sense.
Do some of these committees meet during the day, or is it at night like we are? Do y'all have any idea?
I know that it is not subject to the Open Meetings Act because it's going to be an advisory committee. So they don't have to have they're not required by law to have an agenda and to have a meeting here in council chambers. And they've talked about meeting at other places if it's more convenient. And I don't know if that'll be a Wednesday morning or a Friday morning or during the day. It's unknown. I think in part it depends on who's on the committee and when they're available. It's going to be a big committee, yes, sir.
Here's the scope. Martin's pulling it up. And so there's all the members and the scope itself. And I thought below this, I think is where it said something about meeting twice a week. But there's the scope of it. Well, maybe I didn't.
It's a minimum of
There
two
we go.
times a week. I'm sorry, it's a minimum of 2 times per month. That doesn't mean that, especially if somebody's buying breakfast, they don't do it daily or weekly.
Well, so is the idea to gather more information and then make a decision on the next meeting? That's not going to delay anything for these guys, right? And if they need a stand-in, one of us can always just stand in real quick. And I know you like to have a lot of advance notice, so I'm not sure that this is, and you also work way on the other side of town of Houston, so I work locally, but preferably this is not a me doing it. I mean, I don't want to take something that somebody else wants to do it. And Jennifer, I think you and Daryl both would be ideal for the position. Okay. All right. Sure.
So what is that? On the schedule, they said that they're hoping that council takes action on the 28th. But again, I think the idea was to get a recommendation from you. So
One of us will do it. We're just going to decide who. Is that
Okay.
good enough?
that works for me.
Probably not.
I don't know when they're going to schedule their first meeting. So I think that they're hoping to have things firmed up or work on firming things up at the 28th meeting for city council, but it might be that they're still doing that after the 28th.
Sure.
I couldn't say.
I'll be more than happy to stand in for a meeting. If that's the case, if they need somebody just to stand in, I'll be more than happy to stand in for one meeting. And then if we have a volunteer to take over, I'd be more than happy to step right back out of that.
I was going to say, I know that the short-term rental discussion moved rather quickly. So that's the reason why I think the sooner we can get a recommendation and the sooner we can have that before the council, so that way they can move forward with their committee and start having those meetings.
We are going to meet in person.
We don't have an answer to that question. Again, it's an advisory committee. It's not required to comply with the Open Meetings Act. We can't say that it's going to be in person versus Zoom versus at a coffee shop. I don't have those. Well, maybe Martin has those answers. I don't have those answers for you today.
If Lawrence doesn't have those answers, then I don't have those answers.
I wouldn't mind doing it. Obviously, I know a lot about drainage, but I just would like possibly to know like the time. I mean, I know it's 2 times per month, but just like when. But just only because, or have some idea, just so I know that I could do it, and not sign up for something and then not be able to do it. So I do feel like I'm around drainage and dealing with drainage every single day I work, but like I said, it's just one of those. If I had a little bit more information on when they think they might meet, it would help a lot.
Okay. I think I can run with a somewhat of a recommendation for either Commissioner Hendricks or Chair Fuertes with a strong head nod to the first as either the recommendation or a recommendation with a backup.
All right, then let's move on. Roman numeral number 7 is discussion items. Is there anything, any commissioner activity report? Nope. I started reading a book instead of, so the next P&Z meeting is March 7th. Anyone know that they cannot attend? All right.
Chair Fuertes, back on item number 5, did you want to have an actual recommendation with a vote for Commissioner Hendricks as the primary and Chair Fuertes as the backup?
Do we have to actually physically vote on?
Well, if we're going to say that y'all made this recommendation, it's going to be through a vote.
All right.
If you're saying that you're willing to consider it after you get more details, then I would say it doesn't need to be a vote.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says that you're locked in it. After you go, if you go to the first meeting and you realize that it's more than you're able to commit, or you're the only person in the group who has a conflict, you could say, as much as I'd love to be here, I can't. And I recommend that we replace me with somebody else and move on from there. So,
Perfect. I'll be the backup. All those in favor? Is that good enough? Didn't want to be too official.
I think we've got what you're going for here. Thank you.
All right. All right. If that that concludes everything, it is 7:43. Meeting over. Meeting adjourned.